Bristol City are back, I guess, and that's gone by like that. And we kick off our campaign today away at Sheffield United, a Year 2 parachute team. We'll be talking about that game in a little bit. We'll also be talking about the season as a whole. What can we expect from this Bristol City team? And I've gone through the transfer business. I've tried to kind of look at objectively and areas of concern, but also some good things within the squad. What can be built upon from last season? So we'll talk about that. Apologies in advance. I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is it's a bit croaky. So apologise for that. But yeah, let's start with the Bristol City transfer business. We'll talk about the season as a whole first, so like a little season preview, and then we'll talk about the game tonight away at Sheffield United, which is conveniently for this video at 5:30. So time pressure is not as big. So let's look at the transfer business first up. So incomings for Bristol City have been Emil Rees, Joe Lumley, Adam Randall, and on loan, Radek Vitek. We'll start with Emil Rees. As with all of these players, incomings in particular, I've talked about sort of them individually, so you can have a look at what I think about them in the videos in the archives of the channel, so you can go check that out after you watch this video. Emil Rees, championship goal scorer, has been consistent-ish for Preston. If fit, will probably get you double figures. Is what getting the consensus off. Joe Lumley, that's a weird one, isn't it? Because he came in before we got the news that Max O'Leary was out for about 4 months, and he was brought in probably the expectation of being a number 2, and then Lewis Thomas behind him. And you'd have thought if anything was to happen to Max O'Leary, he'd probably be the one to step in. But that's been sort of kind of thrown in the air very much by the fact that we've signed Radek Vitek on loan. So does that give you the impression that actually we don't trust Lumley enough to make him the number 1, and Vitek has been brought in to play games? It's probably the logical justification of that. We've also signed Plymouth Argyle captain Adam Randall to bolster the midfield, and I think that's probably the strongest area of the squad at the moment. Look, we've got numbers in different positions across the pitch, and this is an area where we'll talk about it in a little bit. But the quality in midfield, I think, is vast. You've got Jason Knight, you've got Joe Williams, you've got Max Bird, you've got Adam Randall. You've got some good players in midfield. Yes, we've lost Marcus McGuane, but I think you've got more than enough in that midfield department for Bristol City to cope with that. In terms of outgoings, no major ones probably, apart from Naki Wells and maybe George Earthy, who's not going to return probably from the end of his loan. Naismith's gone out, Bashik's gone out, Delagan Hickman's permanently gone out now, Ayman Benarouz, Marcus McGuane, who is a good squad player for Bristol City, but nothing more than that. George Earthy was the end of his loan. And the big one probably is, the biggest one is probably Naki Wells, who scored double figures for Bristol City last season, played a lot of games, probably was brought into the team because of the fact that Sinclair Armstrong and Fally Mayulu weren't firing, and he was probably the third choice, and he was drafted in because of a little bit of desperation, but he did fantastically well. Was he brought in because of injury? Maybe a bit of both, but anyway, did fantastically well, and now he's gone on to Luton. I don't know, you lose the experience with Naki Wells, but there's no sort of, at his age, there's no sort of guarantee that he would have been able to replicate that same season again. And I think the way Liam Manning played really suited Naki Wells. We tried to get the best out of him, and we did. We did, I think, what we could do with Naki Wells. So good luck to him. I don't know if he'd have fit a stupid system anyway. Again, I've talked about Naki Wells leaving on the channel before. In terms of good stuff within the squad, there's a lot of stability. As I mentioned, not a lot of players of key note, again, apart from Wells and maybe even Earthy, have gone out of the squad. So it's relatively stable. We've not lost any big players, so key players, star players. Jason Knight, he looks like he'll be staying. He's still the captain. So no major churn, like sometimes happens with teams that lose. A team that loses in the playoffs. We've seen it with Coventry. We've seen it with Barnsley and Huddersfield. That's probably the worst example. Coventry's probably a good example of you sell your 2 best players and you go again and really sort of reinvest. Barnsley and Huddersfield sell their best players, lost their managers, and then it sort of completely fell apart. We have lost our manager, but the kit in terms of players, key players staying, we've still got a large proportion of the squad still there. And I think there are a couple of departments in the team that I think are, really quite good, and I think Struber will enjoy them. It's probably the midfield, the central midfield department, and the central defence department, which I think both, as I said earlier, a lot of the team or the squad is high in numbers, but I think these 2 areas are probably also high in quality. In defence, maybe could argue a little bit of a lack of pace. You've got Rob Atkinson, you've got Rob Dickey, you've got Zach Viner, You've got Luke McNally, maybe a little lack of pace, but I think you've got quality in there. Some top championship defenders and a midfield, as I mentioned. I think you've got quality in there. In terms of areas of concern, how will these players adapt to Gerhard Struber? Like, it's a very different sort of football that we're expecting and probably will play from the back end of last season. It was methodical, it was slow, it was very, very sort of calculated. Every step felt like had a purpose and had an end goal. This is a bit more chaotic. This is a bit more sort of off the cuff. That might be a good thing for the squad. That might be exactly what's needed. A little bit of that balancing with what was good last season, taking that into this season, might be the thing that takes us to that next level. But that's, you can't answer that without having any sort of evidence from the season. As I said, we've got depth in numbers pretty much all over the pitch, but certain areas I've got question marks over whether we've got the quality to really step, sort of people in there to really step up. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll take the forward sort of positions as a reference point. You've got numbers in particularly the striker department: Sinclair Armstrong, Emil Reese, Fali Miulu, and then Ephraim Yeboah, potentially Harry Cornick, potentially Sam Bell as well. So you've got numbers. You've got a lot of numbers in there, but it's just quality. I think you're expecting Emil Reese to have a good season, which is, I think fair. I think he would have to have a good season. But then the other ones, particularly Sinclair Armstrong and Fali Miulu, who are probably just one down from Emil Reese, they've not been convincing, have they, in their time in Bristol City? I mean, Fali Miulu got shipped out on loan after 6 months. That's how horrid his time here was last season. So have you got the quality to step up? Because you're going to have injuries. We already have injuries and we'll talk about the left back department in a little bit. You've already got injuries. You're going to have more injuries. You're going to have injuries to different players. If Emil Reese gets injured, and you have to play front two of Fally and Sinclair Armstrong, how convinced are you by that? I'm not that convinced. So, look, it's not as easy to just say, well, we'll sign another one, because that creates a whole load of problems. You might sign the right one, and you might partner someone with Emil Reese who just becomes, brilliant and fantastic, and that might work. But you've got 6 other players in there, I think, who are, going to really be wanting to play games for Bristol City. And that competition is great, but if you have too much competition, players are going to be unhappy and stuff like that. So you've got a bit of a conundrum, I think, with the squad. The left back situation, you've got Cam Pring, who's injured and won't be playing for a while, won't be playing tonight. You've got Hayden Roberts, who's probably the natural, easy choice to step up into that position. Hayden Roberts is an unconvincing one in my eyes, in my opinion. Other people might feel different. Feel free to disagree in the comment section below. I'm not saying he's a horrendous player or anything. I'm just saying there have been moments with Hayden Roberts I just go, you really what we need to take that next step, and that's another issue I have with depth in the squad. It's obviously going to be really hard to find players who are going to be happy to back up and are going to be really, really good and can step up. But you need that right sort of blend, and some positions I feel like don't really have that, and that's what my concern is. In terms of expectations going into the season, it's a difficult one because you've got a team that pretty much the whole of it finished in the playoffs last season, apart from a couple of key players who were pretty much starters towards the back end of the season. But then also on the other hand, you've got teams who finished a lot of places below us, who've probably strengthened the squad really well. Look, I do think compared to last season, our squad is probably slightly stronger with the addition of Reese. Is he an upgrade on Naki Wells? Different players, sort of different systems, probably better fit into what Struber wants. You've done well to think to upgrade on Marcus McGuane with Adam Randall. You've got a goalkeeper to replace Max O'Leary. That's a good one. And you've got an experienced goalkeeper to back him up in Joe Lumley. So there is arguments to say that our squad is actually better as a whole because of the transfer window. But how much better? How much of an improvement is it going to be? Because 68 points is probably not going to be enough. That's a bit of that's a bold take. Probably won't be enough to get into the playoffs this time around. And you've got the dilemma of 2 teams coming up from League One in Wrexham and Birmingham, who are going to be really competitive. We saw from Birmingham, they played Ipswich last night. They were brilliant, I thought. So you're probably going to expect them to be, right near the top of the division. Probably Birmingham more so than Wrexham. But still, they're going to be a nuisance to a team like us who, have hopes and ambitions of getting into that top 6. Once again, they're probably going to displace a couple of teams and knock a few teams down a few places. So that's another problem. And as I mentioned, you've got teams such as Norwich, Millwall, who've Coventry, Derby, who've strengthened and done some good business, and probably in terms of net gain, in terms of squad strength, probably have more, and couple that with the feeling or the sentiment that we probably overachieved last season and finished above teams we probably shouldn't have on paper. But again, football's been played on paper, and we were a better team, cohesion and stuff like that. But if those teams click, obviously everyone can't click. Someone will underperform. There's a sentiment that they probably should finish above us. Again, that might be difficult to hear, but I think that's just the expectation. So you can check out what I said about us in my championship predictions, but I had us regressing a little bit. A regression doesn't necessarily mean a failure because it's going to be so hard. I do sympathise with Struber in that fact because he said the expectations are high, and yeah, okay, they are high, but how high? Can you replicate sixth place? My head says probably not, but if a few places down with a similarish points tally and being really competitive, is that the worst thing ever? And building and really instilling the pattern of play that Struber wants, is that a bad thing? Probably not either. So I think it's an interesting conundrum and an interesting situation that we're in. But I think we're in for a season where the football's going to be a lot more sort of carefree, if that's the right word. That's not meant to come across as disrespectful or anything. If it's a lot more take risks and just do what you feel like in final third and make sure you get goals. Obviously, there's a little bit more to that, but generally, you get a little bit more excitement and stuff like that, which is great. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and expectations in terms of the season wise and what you think will happen as we develop into the season. Do you want to see a pattern of play that gets instilled as we go into the season and more sort of constructed and more akin to what we want from Struber? I think that's probably the first signs we're looking for in the first few games from this Bristol City team. But let's move on to our first game tonight away at Sheffield United. So we kick off our 25-26 championship campaign away at Sheffield United. This is a pretty traumatic game from last season. This is also our last competitive game, and a little bit of a feeling of, can we go there and get a bit of revenge? That would be fantastic. And can we get the 14-15 season, the first game of Sheffield United away? If we can get a repeat of that, that would be pretty nice. But Sheffield United, talking about them a little bit, they've changed manager as well, but they actually sacked Chris Wilder instead of Chris Wilder getting poached, and they've replaced him with Ruben Sellers. And I quite like Ruben Sellers. I've had him quite high up in my championship managerial rankings. I think he's a fantastic manager. I think he's going to do really well for Blades. But there's been a lot of churn. They've lost a couple of really key players, and they've lost a lot of loan players. Pretty much, actually, no, they've lost all their loan players and not got anyone back, have they? So they've lost Ahmed Odzic, they've lost Vinny Souza. Those are two very key players. Gus Harmer is still there, which is a massive headache for us. He always shows up against us. He's a brilliant player. But they've also signed some quality players, a little bit of unknown, but some quality players. And Tyler Binden on loan, who's really good at Reading and was impressive in the EFL. Louis Barry is just, yeah, he's ready to go when he's fit. I think he's fantastic. And then you've got exciting players like Shibril Samare, Polin Dakov, I think that's his name. So you've got not a lot coming in. There'll probably be more business with United as we go on to the end of transfer window. But still, even with all the outgoings and losing two key players and not really bringing too much in, there's still a lot of quality in that United team. Tyrese Campbell, Callum O'Hare, Gus Harmer, as I mentioned, Tom Cannon, Louis Barry, Arblaster. I don't know if he's going to be fair, actually. Sidney Peck. You've got really good players in there anyway. So it might actually be the best time to play Sheffield United because of the fact they probably still have a lot of business to do from now until the end of the window. They're not fully settled. They've got a new manager. They've got a lot of churn. This might not be the worst time for Bristol City to play them. Hence why I've got us, as you can see in my championship predictions for this round, which I released yesterday, that I've actually got us to draw this game 1-1 and a repeat of what happened at Bramall Lane last season in the league. Please don't be 3-0 to Sheffield United. But I think we'll be competitive. I think we're probably more stable in terms of squad and probably have less to do if there isn't going to be any more incomings in the transfer market. So I think we're going to be competitive, and I think we'll give them a good game. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Sellers to get his feet on the table, really sort of get things moving at Sheffield United. Hence why I've got us to draw 1-1. Let me know your predictions down in the comment section down below. In terms of teams expected, I probably a three at the back for Bristol City. Probably going to be Vitek, Atkinson, Viner, Tanner, possibly McCrory, Hirakawa. If you're going with the midfield two, Randall and Knight. If Max Bird plays, he'd probably play a little bit further up. Then you've got Mehmeti and Twine, and then Emil Reese. So you've got actually quite nice options. A few players will probably be left out that probably won't, probably will like to be playing, such as Max Bird. But I think you've got options, and if that is the formation, what we played this back in last season, I think that will probably be the team. Let me know your team predictions down in the comment section down below. But yeah, I'm relatively positive about this opening fixture. I think we can get off to an okay start. I think we'll probably draw 1-1. Let me know score predictions down in the comment section down below. Obviously, all of what I've just said caveated by the fact that I understand and I appreciate Sheffield United are a very good team and on paper probably should be beating us. But I'm just going to go with a little bit of optimism and hope that we can get something to start the season off with. But yeah, that is it. Thank you very much for watching this season preview / match preview for the game that's today. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Keep safe. Like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you all later. Cheers.